The scorching midday sun beat down on the training yard at the naval base in Coronado, California. Maya Rodriguez walked toward the mess hall, her shoulders slightly hunched from the exhaustion of an entire morning processing medical documentation. Her journey as a Navy corpsman had begun just 8 months ago, and each day seemed to bring a new challenge to her resilience. "Hey, look who it is!" The voice echoed across the yard, dripping with sarcasm. "The little doll from the medical department." Maya didn't need to look to recognize the voice. Sergeant Derek Kruger, former Marine, transferred to the Navy 2 years ago, with a reputation as polished as his inflated ego. He was surrounded by a group of sailors, all men, all laughing at the easy joke. She kept walking, eyes fixed straight ahead. She had already learned that ignoring was, most of the time, the best strategy. "Yo. Rodriguez! I'm talking to you!" Kruger took a few large steps in her direction, blocking her path. He was tall, about 6'3", with broad shoulders that seemed to fill all the space. "How rude, huh? When a superior speaks, you respond." Maya stopped, took a deep breath, and met his eyes. "With all due respect, Sergeant, I was just going to lunch." "With all due respect." He mimicked her voice in a high-pitched, mocking tone. The group behind him erupted in laughter. "You know what your problem is, Rodriguez? You think you belong here. You think you can do the same work we do." "I do my job." "Sergeant, your job?" Kruger stepped forward, invading her personal space. "Your job is filling out forms and putting on Band-Aids. But here, on this base, we've got SEALs, Rodriguez, real men, warriors, and you're just a distraction in a skirt." The muscles in Maya's jaw tightened. She could feel the heat rising up her neck, the ancestral anger she had learned to control over the years. Years that Derek Kruger had no idea existed. "May I go now, Sergeant?" "No," he smiled, a cruel and calculated smile. "You know what? I have a better idea. How about we settle this the military way? You and me. Hand-to-hand combat. Training, of course." He looked back at his cronies. "Just to show everyone here how much you really belong in this place." The yard had gone silent. Other sailors began to approach, sensing the drama in the air like sharks sensing blood in the water. "That's, not necessary," Maya said calmly. "Oh no, I think it is. Because you stand there all superior, pretending you're equal to the men here. But when it comes down to it, you back down. Typical." Maya closed her eyes for a second. She thought of her coach, of all the times he had said, "Other people's egos are not your problem, but if they force your hand, don't hesitate." When she opened her eyes, something had changed. A dangerous stillness took over her posture. "All right, Sergeant, if that's what you want." Kruger's smile widened. He had won, or at least that's what he thought. "That's what I thought," Kruger said, cracking his knuckles theatrically. Finally grew a spine. "All right, Rodriguez, let's make this official." He turned to the growing crowd. "Somebody go grab Chief Matheson. Tell him we've got a training exercise going on here." He looked back at Maya, his eyes gleaming with malicious satisfaction. Wouldn't want anyone to say this wasn't by the book. Within minutes, Chief Petty Officer Matheson arrived, his weathered face showing confusion and irritation. He was a career sailor, 2 tours in Afghanistan, and zero tolerance for drama on his base. "What the hell is going on here?" Matheson demanded, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "Chief," Kruger said, straightening up and adopting a professional tone. "Corpsman Rodriguez and I were discussing hand-to-hand combat training. She expressed interest in participating in a demonstration bout. I thought it would be good for morale. Show the junior enlisted what proper technique looks like." Matheson's eyes narrowed. He looked from Kruger to Maya, reading the situation instantly. He'd seen this before, the posturing, the public challenge, the thinly veiled harassment disguised as training. "That true, Rodriguez?" Matheson asked. "You want to do this?" Maya met his eyes steadily. "Yes, Chief, I'm willing to participate." Matheson studied her for a long moment. Something in her calm, controlled demeanor gave him pause. There was no fear there, no hesitation, just a cold, quiet certainty that he'd seen before in the eyes of combat veterans. "Fine," he said finally, "but we do this right. Regulation sparring gear, mouth guards, and I'm refereeing. This stays controlled, or I shut it down. Understood?" "Yes, Chief," they both responded. "And Kruger," Matheson added, his voice dropping to a warning growl. "If I see anything that looks like you're trying to hurt her rather than spar, I will personally ensure you spend the next month scrubbing bilges with a toothbrush. Are we clear?" "Crystal, Chief." The crowd had swelled now. Word had spread like wildfire across the base. Sailors were emerging from buildings, workstations abandoned. Even a few officers had materialized at the edges of the gathering, drawn by curiosity and concern. As Maya walked toward the designated sparring area, a rubberized mat section of the training yard, she began her mental preparation. She rolled her shoulders, bounced lightly on the balls of her feet. She could feel the familiar pre-fight calm settling over her, the one she'd experienced dozens of times before, not in a military context, in a cage. Kruger was already on the mat, shirtless now, showing off his muscled physique to the crowd. He shadowboxed, throwing exaggerated punches and kicks playing to his audience. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" he called out. "Last chance to back out with your dignity intact." Maya said nothing. She simply stepped onto the mat, her face an unreadable mask. Chief Matheson positioned himself between them. "All right, listen up. This is a controlled sparring match, light to moderate contact only. No strikes to the groin, no eye gouging, no biting. You tap out, you verbally submit, or I stop it. Those are the only ways this ends. Understood?" They both nodded. "Touch gloves and—" Kruger didn't wait for the full instruction. The moment Matheson said touch, he lunged forward with a heavy right hand, aiming directly for Maya's face. It was a sucker punch, designed to end the fight before it began, to humiliate her in front of everyone. But his fist hit nothing but air. Maya had slipped to the outside, her head movement so subtle and precise that Kruger's momentum carried him stumbling forward. Before he could recover, she was behind him, and in one fluid motion, she kicked out his lead leg. Kruger hit the mat hard, face first, the air exploding from his lungs. The crowd gasped. He pushed himself up quickly, his face now red, partly from the impact, partly from embarrassment. "You got lucky," he snarled. "Reset," Matheson called. "And Kruger, wait for my goddamn signal." They squared up again. This time, Matheson let the tension build. "Fight," Kruger came forward. More cautiously now, respect and anger mixing in his approach. He threw a jab, testing her. Maya parried it easily. He threw another, then a low kick. She checked it, the impact making a sharp crack against her shin. He pressed forward, throwing combinations now. Jab, cross, hook. Maya moved, her footwork immaculate, slipping and weaving. She wasn't just defending, she was studying him, reading his patterns, his telegraphs, the way he dropped his right hand after throwing his cross. And then, she saw it. The opening. Kruger threw his right cross again, telegraphing it with a slight dip of his, shoulder. As his hand extended, Maya exploded forward. She parried the punch with her left hand, simultaneously stepping to the outside, and in one devastating motion, she drove her right elbow directly into his exposed ribs. The sound was sickening, a wet crack that echoed across the silent yard. Kruger's face went white. He staggered back, his arm clutching his side, his breath coming in sharp, agonized gasps. But Maya wasn't done. She closed the distance before he could recover. Kruger, still reeling from the rib shot, threw a desperate haymaker. Wild, uncontrolled, born of panic rather than technique. Maya ducked under it effortlessly. As his arm sailed over her head, she shot in low, her shoulder driving into his midsection. Her arms wrapped around his legs in a perfect double-leg takedown. She lifted, twisted, and slammed him onto the mat with controlled violence. The impact drove what little air remained from Kruger's lungs. But Maya gave him no time to breathe. No time to think. She immediately transitioned, her body moving with the fluid precision of someone who had drilled these movements thousands of times. She slid into side control, her weight distributed perfectly to pin him down. Kruger bucked, tried to bridge, his survival instincts kicking in, but every movement he made, she countered. It was like watching a chess grandmaster playing against an amateur. She was 3 moves ahead of him at all times. Then, with a speed that made several onlookers gasp, she trapped his near arm, swung her leg over his head and locked in an arm bar. Her hips elevated, hyperextending his elbow joint. The technique was textbook perfect. "Tap!" Kruger screamed, his voice cracking with pain and panic. "Tap! Tap!" Maya released immediately, rolling away and standing up in one smooth motion. Her breathing was elevated but controlled, not a hair out of place. Meanwhile, Kruger lay on the mat, clutching his arm, his face contorted in humiliation and agony. The crowd was dead silent. Shock rippled through the assembled sailors like a physical wave. "Chief?" Matheson stood frozen for a moment, his mind trying to process what he'd just witnessed. That wasn't luck. That wasn't beginner's fortune. That was elite-level technical skill. "Jesus Christ," someone whispered from the crowd. Maya extended her hand to Kruger. "Good match, Sergeant." He stared at her hand like it was a venomous snake, his ego too shattered to accept the gesture. He pushed himself up with his good arm, staggered to his feet, and limped off the mat without a word, disappearing into the crowd. As the spectators began to disperse, murmuring in amazement, Chief Matheson approached Maya. His expression was a mixture of confusion and dawning realization. "Rodriguez," he said quietly, "where the hell did you learn to fight like that?" Maya looked at him, and for the first time, a small smile touched her lips. "I train a little in my off time, Chief." "Train a little? Matheson repeated, his tone incredulous. "Corpsman, I've seen a lot of fighters in my career. That wasn't a little training. That was professional-level technique." Before Maya could respond, a voice cut through the dispersing crowd. "Attention on deck!" Everyone snapped to attention. Striding across the yard, his face carved from granite, was Commander William Price, the base's executive officer. And behind him, moving with the relaxed confidence of men who feared nothing and no one, were 3 Navy SEALs from Team 7. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Commander Price stopped at the edge of the mat, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. The training equipment, the scattered crowd, Kruger limping away in the distance, and Maya Rodriguez standing at attention, barely winded. "As you were," Price said. The crowd relaxed slightly, but the tension remained thick. One of the SEALs, Lieutenant Commander with a weathered face and cold blue eyes, stepped forward. His name tape read Hansen. He looked at Maya for a long, measuring moment. "You're Rodriguez?" he asked. "Yes, sir." "The corpsman who just put Sergeant Kruger on his ass?" "Yes, sir." Hansen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Chief Matheson, what happened here?" Matheson straightened. "Sir, Sergeant Kruger challenged Corpsman Rodriguez to a sparring match. I supervised. It was decisive." "Decisive," Hansen repeated. He took a step closer to Maya, studying her the way a jeweler might study a diamond under a loupe. "Rodriguez, you have any martial arts background?" Maya hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "Some, sir." "Some." Hansen turned to one of the other SEALs, a grizzled chief with arms like tree trunks. "Chief Kowalski, didn't you mention something about a fighter you saw a few years back? Female bantamweight? Submission specialist?" Kowalski's eyes widened. He pulled out his phone, fingers flying across the screen. After a moment, he held it up, showing a photo. It was a fight poster. UFC Fight Night, San Diego, 3 years ago. And there, in full color, was Maya Rodriguez, slightly younger, her hair longer, but unmistakably her. The text read, "Maya the Reaper, Rodriguez vs. Jessica Carmichael." The silence that followed was deafening. "Holy shit," someone breathed. Hansen took the phone, looked at the image, then at Maya. Maya, the Reaper. Rodriguez, professional MMA fighter. 7 wins, 1 loss, 6 wins by submission. Fought in the UFC twice before. He trailed off, his eyes narrowing. Before you enlisted. Maya stood perfectly still, her face neutral. Yes, sir. And you didn't think that was information worth mentioning when some meathead challenged you to a fight? He didn't ask about my background, sir. He just wanted to spar. A sound emerged from Hansen's throat. It might have been a laugh or a cough. It was hard to tell. Commander Price stepped forward now, his expression unreadable. Rodriguez, why did you leave? Professional fighting to become a Navy corpsman? Maya's jaw tightened slightly. It was a question she'd been asked before, always with the same underlying assumption, that she'd failed, that she'd run away, that she couldn't cut it in the cage. Permission to speak freely, sir? Granted. I didn't. Leave because I couldn't fight anymore, sir. I left because fighting stopped being enough. She paused, choosing her words carefully. In the cage, I could only save myself. Here, I can save others. My father was a Marine. He died in Fallujah when I was 12. A corpsman stayed with him for 4 hours under fire trying to keep him alive. That corpsman took 2 bullets doing it. Her voice remained steady, but something deeper flickered in her eyes. I realized I didn't want to be the person who wins fights. I wanted to be the person who saves lives. So I walked away from a contract, enlisted, and here I am. The yard was silent. Even the wind seemed to have stopped. Commander Price studied her for a long moment. That's a hell of a sacrifice, Rodriguez. No, sir, it was a choice. There's a difference. Hansen stepped forward, his expression still unreadable. You know what you just did, don't you? In front of half this base, you humiliated a senior NCO, a man with connections, with friends. Your life here is about to get very complicated. I understand, sir. Do you? Hansen's voice dropped lower. Because Kruger's ego isn't the only thing you broke today. You broke an illusion. You made a lot of men here question things they thought they knew. Some of them will respect you for it. Others. He let the sentence hang. Chief Kowalski spoke up, his voice rough. Sir, if I may. I watched her fight live in San Diego. She fought Carmichael, who outweighed her by 8 pounds and had a 4-inch reach advantage. Carmichael talked trash for weeks before the fight, said Rodriguez didn't belong in the UFC, that she was just there to fill a quota. He smiled grimly. Rodriguez submitted her in the second round with a rear naked choke so tight the ref had to pry her. Arms off, Carmichael was unconscious for 20 seconds. I remember that fight, another SEAL chimed in from the back. Carmichael never fought again after that, retired 6 months later. Hansen looked back at Maya. You could have ended Kruger. That armbar. You had full extension. You could have, snapped his elbow like a twig. Yes, sir. Why didn't you? Because he's not my enemy, sir. He's just ignorant. There's a difference. For the first time, Hansen's stone face cracked into something that might have been respect. Chief Matheson, I want Rodriguez's training records on my desk by 1600. I want to know everything. Her PT scores, her medical certifications, her psych evals, everything. Aye, sir. Hansen turned back to Maya. Rodriguez, you're dismissed. But this conversation isn't over, not by a long shot. Understood, sir. As Maya walked away from the mat, the crowd parted. For her. But this time it wasn't out of dismissal or mockery. It was out of respect. And for some, fear. She made it halfway across the yard before Chief Kowalski jogged up beside her. Corpsman Rodriguez, hold up. She stopped, turned. Chief? Kowalski looked around, making sure they were out of earshot, then spoke quietly. That thing you did today, that took guts, real guts, but Hansen's right. You just painted a target on your back. Kruger has friends. He's got a crew, and they're not going to let this go. I can handle it, Chief. I don't doubt that, Kowalski said. But here's the, thing. You don't have to handle it alone. Hansen and we're running selection trials for SEAL support staff. Combat medics, specifically. We need corpsmen who can think under pressure, who won't freeze when the bullets start flying, who can handle themselves in close quarters. He paused. We need people like you. Maya's eyes widened slightly. Chief, I'm not a SEAL. I'm just a what? Just a former UFC fighter who submitted a guy 50 pounds heavier than her in under 2 minutes? Kowalski grinned. Rodriguez, you've got something most of these sailors will never have. You've been in real combat. Maybe not with bullets, but combat is combat. You know what it feels like to have someone trying to hurt you, to break you, and you know how to stay calm and execute. That's exactly what we need. I don't know what to say, Chief. Say you'll think about it. We start trials in 3 weeks. It's voluntary, but if you pass, you'd be assigned to a SEAL team as their primary corpsman. You'd deploy with them, train with them, live with them. It's the hardest job in the Navy for a corpsman, but it's also the most respected. Maya felt something stirring in her chest. Something she hadn't felt since she'd walked out of the cage for the last time. Purpose. Real purpose. I'll think about it, Chief. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Kowalski said with a dark chuckle. The selection course makes Hell Week look like a beach vacation, but something tells me you'll be just fine. As Kowalski walked away, Maya stood alone in the yard, the sun still beating down, her mind racing. She'd come to the Navy to save lives, to honor her father's memory. She never expected to find herself here, standing at the threshold of something bigger. Behind her, she didn't see the figure. Watching from the second-floor window of the medical building, Lieutenant Sarah Chen, the senior medical officer, had watched the entire confrontation, and now she was on the phone. Yes, sir, I'm sure, Chen said quietly into her cell. It's her, Maya Rodriguez, the Reaper. Yes, sir, she's here. And you were right. She's everything you said she'd be. 3 days later, Maya was called to the base commander's office. She'd spent those 3 days in a strange limbo. Word of the fight had spread beyond the base. Videos taken on cell phones had gone viral within military social media circles. Some hailed her as a hero, a symbol of what dedication and skill could achieve regardless of gender. Others condemned her, claiming she'd set women in the military back by resorting to violence, by stooping to Kruger's level. Kruger himself had been conspicuously absent. Rumor had it he'd suffered 2 cracked ribs and a severely sprained elbow. He'd been placed on medical leave and confined to quarters pending an investigation into the incident. Now, as Maya stood outside Captain Jennifer Marchand's office, her heart hammered in her chest. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading. She was going to be reprimanded, possibly even discharged for conduct unbecoming. Enter, came the voice from inside. Maya stepped through the door, snapped to attention, and saluted. Corpsman Rodriguez, reporting as ordered, ma'am. Captain Marchand, a woman in her mid-50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, returned the salute. At ease, Rodriguez, sit down. Maya sat, her back ramrod straight, hands on her knees. Marchand studied her for a long moment, then opened a file on her desk. I've been reading about you, Corpsman. Quite the interesting background. Professional Kai. Fighter. 6 submission victories featured on 2 UFC main cards. Then you walked away from a 6-figure contract to enlist as an E3 making less than $2,000 a month. She looked up. Most people would call that insane. Some have, ma'am. Why did you really do it, Rodriguez? And don't give me the rehearsed answer about your father and saving lives. That's part of it, I'm sure. But there's more. I can see it in your file. Your psych eval notes some unresolved issues you refused to discuss with the counselor. Maya's jaw tightened. This was the question she'd been avoiding for 3 years. The real reason she'd left. Permission to speak freely, ma'am. I wouldn't have asked otherwise. Maya took a deep breath. My last fight before I enlisted. I nearly killed someone. Not in the heat of the moment. Not accidentally. I had her in a rear-naked choke. She was already unconscious, and I kept squeezing. For 5 full seconds after she went limp, the ref had to physically tear my arms off her. Her voice remained steady, but her eyes betrayed the memory's weight. She was in the hospital for 3 days. Doctors said another 2 seconds and she might have suffered permanent brain damage or death. And the worst part, ma'am, in that moment I wanted it. I wanted to hurt her. Not because she'd done anything to me, but because I was angry at everything. At my father's death, at the world, at myself. She met Marshawn's eyes directly. I realized I had become something dangerous. Someone who used violence not as a tool, but as an outlet. So I walked away. I joined the Navy because I needed to learn what my father knew. That real strength isn't about how much damage you can do. It's about how much you can prevent. The office fell silent. Marshawn closed the file slowly. That's the most honest thing anyone's said to me in this office in 5 years, she said finally. And it tells me everything I need to know about who you really are. She stood, walked to her window and looked out over the base. What happened with Sergeant Kruger was unfortunate. But after reviewing the statements from Chief Matheson and 23 witnesses, it's clear that you acted in self-defense within the bounds of a sanctioned sparring match. Kruger, on the other hand, threw the first punch before the official start signal and continued to engage aggressively despite being clearly outmatched. Marshawn turned back to face her. He's being formally reprimanded and will face a captain's mast for conduct unbecoming. He'll likely be reduced in rank and transferred off this base. Maya felt a wave of relief, but also something unexpected. Guilt. Ma'am, if I may, Sergeant. Kruger made a mistake, but I don't think he deserves to have his career destroyed. He was ignorant and arrogant, but he's not evil. He's just a product of a system that taught him to think a certain way. Marshawn's eyebrow rose. You're defending the man who publicly humiliated you and tried to physically dominate you in front of half this base. I'm defending a fellow sailor who made a bad choice, ma'am. We're supposed to be on the same team. Marshawn studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Your compassion is noted, Rodriguez. But the decision has been made. However, she returned to her desk and picked up another file. There's another matter. Lieutenant Commander Hansen has submitted a request for you to participate in SEAL Team support selection. It's voluntary, but I'm going to be frank with you. This is an extraordinary opportunity. If you pass, you'd be one of only a handful of female corpsmen ever assigned to a SEAL team in a combat support role. I'm aware, ma'am. Chief Kowalski briefed me. Then you're also aware that the failure rate is over 80%. You'd be going through modified BUD-S training, underwater demolition exercises, high-altitude parachute, insertion training, close-quarters combat drills with live ammunition. It's designed to break you, Rodriguez. Physically, mentally, emotionally. Yes, ma'am. And you'd be doing it while dealing with the fallout from this incident. There are people on this base who now see you as a threat, others who see you as a publicity stunt, and still others who think you're some kind of feminist icon. None of those perceptions will make your life easier. I understand, ma'am. Marshawn leaned forward, her eyes intense. Do you? Because once you enter that program, there's no quitting. Well, you can quit, but you'll live with that failure for the rest of your career. And given your history, given what you just told me about why you left fighting, I need to know that you can handle the violence, the aggression, the controlled brutality that comes with SEAL operations without losing yourself. Again, it was the question Maya had been asking herself for 3 days. Could she go back into that world? Could she embrace violence again, even righteous violence in service of her country, without becoming the person she'd been in that cage, the person who'd nearly committed manslaughter because she couldn't control her rage? Ma'am, I don't have a perfect answer for you. All I can say is that I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago. I've learned control, I've learned purpose, and more than anything, I've learned that violence without compassion is just cruelty. But violence with compassion, violence in defense of those who can't defend themselves, that's something worth mastering. Marshawn smiled for the first time. That's exactly the answer I was hoping for. She stood and extended her hand. Welcome to SEAL Support Selection, Corpsman Rodriguez. Report to the Special Warfare Training Facility at 0500 Monday morning. Bring your gear, your guts, and your humility. You're going to need all three. Maya stood and shook her hand. Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down. Don't thank me yet. Thank me if you survive the first week. Monday morning, 0445 hours. Maya stood outside the Special Warfare Training Facility, her duffel bag at her feet. The air was cold, the sky still dark. She wasn't alone. 12 other sailors stood with her, all men, all sizing each other up with the nervous energy of warriors about to enter the arena. At exactly 500, the doors burst open. Lieutenant Commander Hansen emerged, followed by Chief Kowalski and 4 other SEAL instructors. They looked like they'd been carved from stone and dipped in bad intentions. Line up! Hansen's voice could have stripped paint. You have 10 seconds! They scrambled into formation. Maya found herself in the middle of the line, flanked by 2 men who were easily twice her size. Hansen walked down the line slowly, studying each face. When he reached Maya, he stopped. Corman Rodriguez, the famous Reaper. His voice was neutral, revealing nothing. You think your UFC experience is going to help you here? No, sir. No, sir, he repeated. That's the smartest thing anyone said all morning. Because in the cage you had a referee, you had rules, you had padding. Here? He leaned in close. Here, the only rule is survival. The only referee is your team. And the only padding is the person next to you. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Hansen moved on. For the next 18 hours they were put through hell. Ocean swims in frigid water, obstacle courses designed by sadists, log carries that turned their shoulders to hamburger, and combat drills that left them gasping and bleeding. By hour 20, 3 candidates had quit. By day 3, that number had risen to 7. Maya remained. She wasn't the fastest, she wasn't the strongest. But she was relentless. Every time an instructor screamed in her face, she absorbed it. Every time the ocean tried to drown her, she fought back. Every time her body begged her to quit, she thought of her father, of the corpsman who'd taken bullets trying to save him. On day 7, during a particularly brutal surf torture session, where they had to lie in the freezing ocean while waves crashed over them, the man next to Maya started to go hypothermic. His lips were blue, his body shaking uncontrollably. I can't, he gasped. I gotta tap out. Maya, her own body screaming with cold, grabbed his hand. Look at me, you're not quitting, not today. Stay with me, breathe, in through your nose, out through your mouth. You're stronger than this water. For 5 minutes, while the instructors watched in silence, Maya kept him conscious, kept him fighting, kept him alive. When they were finally ordered out of the surf, Hansen approached her. That was Martinez. He's a second-generation SEAL. Candidate, his father was Team 6. He was about to quit, to throw away his legacy. Why did you stop him? Maya, shivering violently, met his eyes. Because that's my job, sir. I'm a corpsman. I don't let people quit on life. Something shifted in Hansen's expression. Respect, recognition, understanding. You're going to make it, Rodriguez. I can see it now. You're not here to prove you're as tough as the men. You're here because you're tougher in the ways that actually matter. 3 weeks later, Maya completed the selection course. Of the original 13 candidates, only 4 remained. She was the only woman. The graduation ceremony was small, quiet, attended only by SEAL team members and senior medical staff. When Hansen pinned the Special Warfare Corpsman insignia on her uniform, he leaned in and whispered, "Your father would be proud." For the first time in 3 years, Maya felt tears sting her eyes. 2 months after that, Maya deployed to Syria with SEAL Team 7. During a particularly intense firefight in Raqqa, she saved the life of Chief Kowalski after he took shrapnel to the femoral artery. Under fire, in the dark, she performed emergency battlefield surgery that Navy doctors later said was the most impressive field medicine they'd ever seen. Kowalski survived. So did the rest of the team, thanks in large part to Maya's skill and courage. When they returned stateside, Hansen called her into his office. "Rodriguez, I have something for you." He handed her a framed photograph. It showed her father in his marine dress blues, standing next to a younger Hansen, both of them grinning, covered in Iraqi dust. Maya's breath caught. You knew my father? I served with him in Fallujah, 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines. He saved my life. Twice, once in direct combat, once by talking me out of doing something stupid after I lost men under my command. He was one of the best Marines I ever knew. Hansen's voice grew thick. When Lieutenant Chen told me his daughter had enlisted, that she was here on this base, I pulled every string I could to make sure you got a shot at selection. Not because of who your father was, but because I saw in your record the same thing I saw in him. Someone who understands that real courage isn't about how you fight. It's about why you fight. Maya stared at the photograph, tears streaming freely now. Why didn't you tell me? Because you needed to earn this on your own. Not as Staff Sergeant Rodriguez's daughter, but as Corpsman Maya Rodriguez. And you did. You earned every inch of that insignia on your chest. 6 months later, Maya was invited to speak at a leadership conference at the Naval Academy. As she stood at the podium, looking out at 300 young midshipmen, she thought about Sergeant Kruger, who had, after his reduction in rank and transfer, sent her a letter apologizing and thanking her for showing him what true strength looked like. She thought about the men on her SEAL team, who had gone from skepticism to absolute trust in her abilities. She thought about her father and the corpsman who'd tried to save him. And she thought about the girl who'd once been so consumed by rage that she'd nearly killed someone in a cage. Real strength, she began, her voice clear and powerful, isn't about domination. It's about protection. It's not about how much pain you can inflict. It's about how much pain you can prevent. My journey has taught me that the strongest warrior isn't the one who never shows compassion. It's the one who shows compassion despite having the power to destroy. The audience was silent, transfixed. Some of you will face people who doubt you, who mock you, who try to break you, and you'll have a choice. You can respond with cruelty, or you can respond with strength. True strength. The kind that lifts others up even as you stand your ground. After the speech, a young female midshipman approached her, tears in her eyes. Ma'am, I was about to quit the academy. People have been telling me I don't belong here, that I'm too weak, too emotional. But hearing you, I think I can make it now. Maya put her hand on the young woman's shoulder. You don't think you can make it. You know you can, because you're still here despite everything they've thrown at you. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength that changes the world. As Maya walked out of the auditorium and into the crisp autumn air, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace. She had transformed her rage into purpose, her pain into power, and her trauma into triumph. The Reaper was gone. In her place stood something far more formidable, a protector, a healer, a warrior who understood that the greatest victories aren't won through violence, but through the courage to show mercy when you have the power to destroy. She pulled out her phone and looked at her last text message. It was from Chief Kowalski. Teams deploying again in 6 weeks. You in? Maya smiled and typed her response. Always. Because that was her purpose now, not to fight for herself, but to fight for those who couldn't. Not to destroy her enemies, but to save her brothers and sisters in arms. She had become exactly what her father had been, not just a warrior, but a guardian. And in the end, that made all the difference. This story demonstrates that true strength comes not from the ability to dominate others, but from the wisdom to know when to use force and the compassion to show mercy. Maya Rodriguez transformed from someone consumed by rage into a protector who understood that the greatest warriors are those who fight not for glory, but for those who cannot fight for themselves.